This empty plot was once the location of the new or the Great Synagogue of Danzig, now Gdansk. It was the largest synagogue in Danzig, and the empty plot now bears witness to Nazi hatred. Today, all we can see in this plot is this model. But let's see what happened here. The first record of Jewish presence in the area is well over 1,000 years ago, when a merchant from Spain was in what is today Gdansk. In 1308, Gdansk was taken over by the Teutonic Knights, and in the following year, the Grand Master of the order, Siegfried von Feuchtwangen, forbade Jews to be in the city in an edict of non-toleration, Die Non-Tolerandis Judaeis. This lasted for more than 100 years until Jewish merchants were once more permitted to settle here, and in 1440 a street named Judengasse existed. That is today's Ulica Spichova. Growth of the Jewish community happened after the Emancipation Edict of 1812. The community that grew was similar to the one in Berlin and in other towns in Germany, in as much as it was within liberal tradition, and local Jews almost entirely spoke German. As everywhere in Germany, many Jews volunteered for military service in World War I. About 95 of them died in service. A memorial plaque was later displayed in the Great Synagogue, and this was amongst the artifacts shipped to New York in 1939. After World War I, Danzig became a free city, a sort of independent city-state, under the protection of the League of Nations. The number of Jews in Danzig grew rapidly as there were no immigration restrictions and as people fled from Poland and the Soviet Union. Around 60,000 Jewish refugees passed through Danzig in transit to North America, but some stayed. Germany in this period may have taken in as many as 200,000 Jewish refugees. Before World War I, there were under 3,000 Jews living in Danzig. By November 1923, this had increased to 7,282, 2,500 of whom were citizens of Danzig. By August 1924, this figure reached 9,239. By August 1929, it was 10,448, and it hit a peak of around 12,000 in 1937. In the 1920s, there were two Jewish publications, the weekly Jüdische Wochenblatt, which was published from 1929 to 1938, as well as the Zionist Danziger Echo, which was published until 1936. The National Socialist Party took power in the Free City of Danzig in the elections of May 1933, which led to discrimination against Jews working in the administration. On the 23rd of October 1937, 60 shops and several homes were damaged by racist rioters. Within 1 year, around half of the Jewish community fled. In 1938, Danzig authorities initiated an official policy of repression against Jews. Jewish businesses were seized and handed over to National Socialist supporters. Jews were forbidden to attend theatres, cinemas, public baths and swimming pools, or stay in hotels within the city. They were banned from the medical and legal professions, and Jews were forbidden to reside in Sopot, today's Sopot. The synagogues in Langfur, Mattenboden and Sopot were destroyed from the 12th to 14th of November 1938. The Great Synagogue was saved only because Jewish war veterans guarded the building. The Nuremberg laws were introduced into a theoretically still independent Danzig in November 1938. By the time of the outbreak of war and occupation of Danzig by Nazi Germany, there were only around 1,700 Jews still in the city. In a future video, I might look into the fate of Jewish citizens from Gdansk during the war. The first synagogue that I'm aware of was created near the market in Langfur, today Rzeszów. It was built in 1775 and closed in 1887. Various smaller synagogues were set up in the 19th century, but with the construction of the Great Synagogue, they closed. However, the Orthodox synagogues continued to operate until 1939. The members of the Reform synagogues financed the new synagogue. It was built from 1885 to 1887 on Reitbahnstraße, which is today Ulica Bogusławskiego. It was built by a company from Berlin, Ender und Bergmann, and this company was chosen by the city council. More than 2,000 parishioners were able to participate in services, and the whole building was electrically heated and illuminated, which was still unusual at the end of the 19th century, even in Germany. The synagogue was built in the Neo-Renaissance style on the basis of a long rectangle. It had a large dome, 2 towers, and a lantern which could be seen at night. There was a large stained glass window with the Star of David, and the spires were topped with meshed Stars of David. Large chandeliers were hung from the dome above the main chamber, which could accommodate more than 2,000 people, 1,600 seated on the benches, and over 300 ladies could be in the galleries. The Aron Kodesh Ark was on a pedestal behind a curtain in an apse. Above the ark, the tables of the 10 Commandments were supported by 2 stone lions. Behind it were large organs and space for a 100-person choir. The bema was behind the pedestal. The walls were decorated with motifs of plants, geometric symbols, and biblical verses. The synagogue was opened with a ceremony on the 15th of September 1887. The scrolls of the Torah were transported in from the old synagogue and 2 other synagogues, placed in the Aron Kodesh, and the eternal light was lit. The first service was held on the 8th of December 1887. At the beginning of the 20th century, the synagogue became one of the most notable centres of Reform Judaism. It had a museum, a large part of it which was saved by being shipped to New York in 1939. The synagogue was well known globally. It attracted people from around the world, not only for religion, but also for its lectures on other subjects, as well as its concerts. In the 1930s there were at least 2 arson attempts. Both were stopped by a local militia formed largely by Jewish war veterans who initially could act with the Danzig police. Authorities feared that failure to protect minorities could lead to a Polish intervention. However, when the then Polish government made it clear that it supported Nazi rule in Danzig in the mid-1930s, such protection decreased. In 1939, the archives were shipped to Jerusalem, the library to Vilnius, and the museum to the United States. At the same time, mounting fiscal pressure forced the synagogue to sell the organs to Krakow, candlesticks to Warsaw, and the benches went to Gdansk, Nowy Port. In early 1939, the synagogue was sold to the Senate of Danzig. On the 15th of April 1939, the last service was held in the building, and soon thereafter the Senate took control. A banner was hung on a fence surrounding the building with the text, "Come, dear May, and free us from the Jews." On the 2nd of May 1939, the Nazi-dominated government began demolishing the building. Since then, the plot where it stood has been vacant. It will likely stay vacant despite being in the centre of the city, only a few hundred meters from Długi Targ, which is the main street. Part of the plot is occupied by the Polish Secret Service, Urząd Ochrony Państwa, and on another part a theatre was built, the Gdansk Shakespeare Theatre, which opened in September 2014. However, there is a synagogue today in Gdansk. In 1996, an inauguration ceremony was held in the music school in Gdansk-Rzeszów, which had been a synagogue before the war. I attended this event. It was absolutely packed out. It was so packed out that by the time I got to the food, it had all gone. So that's something that stands in my memory. This community now meets at a separate location, which is very close by. So, thank you very much for listening. I am a big fan of Gdansk. It is my favourite place in the world, and so there will be lots more films, videos about Gdansk here and the history of Gdansk, so please do subscribe, and thanks for listening and all the best.